Welcome back to the channel, Book Dragons. I'm so glad you're here with me today. I've got a book review for you, and that book is Dyatlov Pass by Alan K. Baker. This was my patron pick for the second quarter of 2024. I really didn't know what to expect with this book. I didn't know much about it going into it. I knew it was kind of a historical fiction book with some supernatural type elements to it. I figured I would just kind of go into it blind and see what I thought of it. And I really quite enjoyed this book. Dyatlov Pass is a sci-fi thriller based on real-life events. A group of adventurers from the Ural Polytechnic Institute in Russia went on a skiing expedition to the Ural mountain range. And this took place in 1959, and the expedition was led by a fellow named Igor Dyatlov, which is where we get the name of the book from and the name of the historical accounts. He was the one that led the expedition. And everyone on that expedition went missing until eventually their bodies were found, torn apart, mutilated, what have you, and no one really knew exactly what happened to them. The investigation was just kind of shut down, and so there's not a whole lot of information out there as to exactly what happened. And so Alan Baker takes that story and he reimagines it with a science fiction or supernatural element to it. And so I just thought it was really well done. The basic plot of this book is that it takes place 50 years after the incident happened, and the main character is Viktor Strugatsky. He's a journalist for the Ekaterinburg Gazette, and he's been handed the duties of creating a story commemorating the 50th anniversary of the Dyatlov Pass incident. And as the story progresses, we go back and forth between the recent past and modern day. Strugatsky is being interviewed by a criminal psychologist, as well as the chief investigator on the case by the name of Khabarov, because something related to the original incident happened to Victor and some of his colleagues as well. And Victor was the only one to survive. And so as we progress through the book, we're getting the full story of how Victor came to be on the case, the people he came in contact with, the information that he started to find out from secret sources that he didn't even know where they were coming from. He was just finding random unmarked manila envelopes in his mailbox with additional information, and eventually he would come to go on an expedition to try and find out exactly what had happened. And so as the book progresses, we're flashing back and forth between the actual events that led up to Victor being where he is now and the thoughts and logs that are being kept by the psychologist in correspondence with the investigative team from the police. The reason I call this book a sci-fi novel is because it does have an otherworldly element to it. I'm not going to go into detail about what that is, but I would say if you like Lovecraftian horror, not that this is Lovecraft specifically, there's nothing specifically with Cthulhu or anything like that, but it gives that aura of cosmic events that have been happening, and you just have to read it and find out for yourself. It was really, really well done. The book kept me engaged the entire time. It's a really quick read as well. I was just kind of flying through the book. And the mystery element in this story was really fascinating to me. I don't typically get into history that much, but this made me want to go back and actually read about the real life incident and find out more about it, because it was just such an interesting read. And one of the things that I really liked was the character development of Strugatsky and Inspector Khabarov. The psychologist we got a little bit of information about as well, which was great, but really the main meat of the story focused on Strugatsky and Khabarov. So between the two of those characters, we get the bigger picture that unfolds throughout the story, and I really enjoyed following them as characters. There are other side characters as well, some of which are informants for Strugatsky. Some are other people that he comes into contact with that eventually want to go on the expedition with him and find out what's going on. There's definitely an espionage element to it, so there's a lot of talk about government cover-ups and secrecy around the cosmonaut program, and just a whole lot of stuff is happening in this very short book. It's under 300 pages, and woo, guys, it was such a fun ride. I just really enjoyed myself. So since we're kind of moving into the things that I really liked about the book, of course, I already mentioned I really liked the character development. I really liked the plot as well. I thought it was well paced. It didn't drag at all, in my personal opinion. And as far as the historical elements go, I felt like it was really engaging. It wasn't dry at all. The author presented the facts of the case in such a way that made it very interesting, which is really important for me in a book that incorporates real history, because let's be honest, guys, I get kind of bored with history. It's just me. But this was not dry or boring at all. So that was a real plus for me. The only thing I can think of that I maybe didn't like so much was that I felt like the book ended in such a fashion that left me wanting more. It wrapped up the story just fine, the ending made sense, but I kind of felt like there could easily be a sequel to it. Give us some more information on what happened to the characters involved after the end of this book. So I don't know if there's going to be a second book at all. I don't think there is. I think it's going to be a standalone, which is fine. It works. But I was definitely left wanting more, and I definitely had a lot of questions. But I do think that was intentional. I think the author just wanted to leave a lot of questions open for interpretation. And that's okay. As far as my ranking for this book, I put this in my hoard. It's definitely a book that I thoroughly enjoyed reading, and I would read it again, especially if I go and research some of the historical elements around the story and then go back and read it again. I think that would make for an even more enriching experience. So I'm really happy I got to read this book. Thank you to my patron Kaiju8 for suggesting this to me, and I just had a blast. It's definitely something different for me. It's not the type of book that I would normally read, but with those little science fiction nuggets in there, that made it really fascinating for me. So I'm going to end it there, guys. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Have you read this book? Are you familiar with the historical incident that this book is based on? And if you have not read this book, does it sound like something that would be up your alley? I highly recommend it to anyone, to be honest. I think anybody could benefit from reading this, and I really hope you'll check it out. So until next time, guys, make sure you read more books, and I'll talk with you soon. And I'd like to give a really special shout out to all of my patrons. Thank you for all the support you provide the channel. It really means a lot to me.